Alright, so here is how I made the viral flying witch video, the witch caught on camera video. This video has gone quite viral, especially in Nigeria. People have been talking about it, they've been sharing it a lot, and I thought I should, when I made it, it wasn't intended to, it was actually just for fun, but people think it's real because I made it as real as possible. I actually did my best to make sure that it looked as real as it could. Funny thing is, somebody told me that it was shown on some channel news in Nigeria, I don't know. And then this other person also told me that a certain prophet in a church actually talked about it, believing that it was a real witch caught on camera. So I just laughed. So I thought I should show you guys how I did it, and hopefully those people who believed so much and those who were freaked so much won't get so mad at me. So obviously you can see playing it started on a watch. I knew that I wanted it to start on the watch so that I can just show people the time that this thing is happening, intentionally actually. And then I would go outside, look at the window, and then see some sort of flying swimmy thingy out. It wasn't supposed to fly like this, but I had this crazy idea of making it look like this, but it ended up looking really fine and I loved it in the end. So I'm going to show you just the steps that I did. Nothing in depth, but just going to show you the steps. So this is the part where people will tell you to subscribe to their channel because you're gonna miss updates, but I'm not going to tell you to do that. You're big enough to know what's right and what's wrong. So if you know not subscribing is right, then do it. If you know it's wrong, then let your consciousness eat you up and may you drown in your own guiltiness. Okay, so having said all that, let's jump in. Let me show you how I did this. So obviously, looking at this main video, you can see it's not at night. It was taken, I think, around 7 p.m. and look outside the window, you can see it's not even dark at all. And I know you may be thinking I did a day for night shoot, but actually I didn't. I only took this as a the only thing that I wanted to be in the frame was this steel bar grill and then the rest of the stuff and the curtain, but I actually didn't want to use this. The first thing that I did was I went into Marvelous Designer, I opened it, and then I opened an avatar female. As you can see, just this female body avatar. Then I exported it as an FBX, and then just give it I just give it a name like character or something like that. Then I went over to Miximo, did my login, and then you can create an account. You can just continue with Facebook or you can continue with Google, whatever you want. Next thing is go upload your avatar, and by the way, it can be any 3D object, doesn't matter which one it is. I just chose to get that one. Then after your upload is done, obviously it's gonna ask you to rig it, the auto rigger, which is very simple. Just place the round things where they're supposed to be, and then it will automatically rig your character. I wanted something with a flying animation. Unfortunately, I didn't find anything other than this floating blue thing right here, and then there wasn't any interesting flying things because I wanted the cloth to float as the object is flying. I wanted the hands to swing around and the legs. I wanted more movement, and I couldn't admit that myself. So I thought of an interesting way to make this float in a realistic way, and I had to search for something other than flying. I searched for swim, and as you can see, the swimming in the air thing isn't an odd thing to do. It's actually real. People actually swim. It's a thing actually. So I searched for swim, and interestingly, it gave me 3 results: swimming to edge, and treading water. I got the 3 animations that are visible, and they're the ones that worked for the animation that I was going for. You can see the treading water, the swimming to edge, and the swimming are the ones that I used. I combined them in Cinema 4D and then placed them on top of one another to make one long animation. So I started importing each animation one by one, and then I just started placing them on top of the other using the add motion clip. And then in the add motion clip, I can start adding and combining the animations together, starting from the T-pose actually to the swim. So the T-pose is actually the first animation that you should download from Mixamo, so that it can transition from the T-pose to the other animations. So I just started adding the motion clip on each animation that I have, starting from the T-pose to the swim. So by clicking on the icon and opening in timeline, I can actually start adding and combining the animations. So I can just grab the swim animation and put it on the timeline, and then by just clicking on the T-pose, I can increase its animation, and I can increase this animation length, put it to something like 5 seconds, and then have it intersect between each other, and then that will just create a transition from the T-pose to the swim animation. So if I play, you can see it's transitioning from the T-pose to the swim animation, and I just did the rest. I did the same for the rest of the animations, for the treading on water and the swimming to edge. I just put them in the timeline and I overlapped them, creating one animation loop, creating one long animation. And if the animation is offset, or if it's not lining up, you can use the T-pose pivot object. And if you don't understand much about how to combine animations in motion using motion clip, you can check out many tutorials on YouTube that show you how to do that. So next thing is I jumped back to Marvelous Designer, and I had this very simple shape which I just put on top, and I had to sew the two shapes together and did an animation. As you can see, the character is sort of lying in a flat pose, because I just had to flip it so that it can transition a bit better than standing vertically. I had to put it a bit horizontal so that it transitions smoothly and not pop, because the first attempts that I did, it wasn't actually working well. I had to repeat multiple times, and I had to change the cloth settings to make it work well, and finally I had to just put it in a sort of horizontal way so that it can transition a bit better in the swimming animation. As you can see, the cloth seam running, and after everything was done, I exported the cloth seam as Alembic and I sent it back to Cinema 4D. So now I had to start animating my camera, and actually I didn't animate the 3D character, I animated my camera instead. So I added a background and I put a still image of the background, which I got, and I actually started to place it in the position that I wanted it to be. And the most important thing was the end animation. I knew exactly where I wanted it to be in the end and how I wanted it to face. So I just had to like flip it, play with the view, and then bring in a camera and then just try to position it in that position. Then what I did was I had to animate the offset of the camera so that by the end of the animation it will actually end close to the camera. And I put a no object and I placed the camera inside of a no, and then I had to do extra animation on top of that no object. And then I had to select the top of the head so that I can put some hair on it. And the hair wasn't perfect because I knew I wanted it to be ghosty and witchy, nothing like realistic and stuff like that. I just wanted it to cover the head, so I got the brush tool and started combing it, and I let the animation do the rest. Of course, I had to click on the 3D object and then give it a collider tag for the hair, so that as it swims in the hair, it will be colliding with the hair. Next thing, I added the lights, and I had to place one blue light from the left top side, mimicking the light in the background, so that we can have some light from the left side. And then I added another light which was mimicking the light from my phone, just with a subtle amount so that it's not too much. And then just make it, and I wanted to be as close as possible to match the lighting in the scene and not overdo it, and as you can see, it matched pretty well. After I did that, I just did my render and went to After Effects. So into After Effects, you can see the video that I showed you before. Why did I do this instead of just filming it in the daytime? Actually, why I did this is it was a choice. Instead of just shooting in daytime and then making it a night a night scene. I wanted it to be actually night, but the problem is, if you're doing video, it's kind of hard to just film it without having extreme noise or without having it be so dark. I just took a still frame for the background, which was at night, actually at night, and then I used that and I placed it in the footage that I shot, which was at 5 p.m. So I had to place the still image that I shot at night and put it on that, Of course, to do that, I had to rotoscope everything so that it can be empty, so that I can put that in the back. Okay. Then you can see there are no objects, which I just tracked the foreground movement so that I can place the still image in the background. There was some trial and error, and I had to split the background into two at some point so that I can just have two different tracks and not have everything, interacting with each other. Next thing is I had to bring in the, animation for the rendered animation, and just by placing it on top, you can see that it doesn't match at all. The footages, the background, and the animation doesn't really match at all. So we're going to do a lot of work to start matching it, and I'll show you how I did most of the matching. So the first thing is I had to pre-compose it, and then I had to pre-compose the background and the flying character together so that I can do most of my changes in the pre-comp and then just have the background and the flying character together. So now if I go in the pre-comp, I'm going to try and start matching the colors now by putting a levels and playing with the bright values, and also going to the RGB and just match the reds, the greens, and the blues, and make sure that they are matching quite close. And if it's too extreme, you can click on it and then just go to the compositing and lower the opacity, and as you can see, it's matching a little bit. Also, I had to tone down the reds from the dress or the cloth that it has, and I just had to make it a bit subtle, not too saturated, because it will match better. Next thing that I did was I rendered out some multipass for the hair, for the body, and for the cloth. Then I used that multipass to separate the hair so that I can correct it separately, and the hands and the dress. And you can do that. It's not really necessary, but I just use those multipasses to correct individual elements like the hair and the dress. Just have more control over those. And then what I did was I got the same character render and I duplicated it, and then I applied a tint and the selective color and the levels, and then I just changed the tint colors to white, and I placed it below and created a solid. I created a blue solid and I placed that layer below, and I changed the track matte to Luma Matte so that it can cut out the blue solid. That way I'm going to have a layer, a sort of blue layer on top, which will mimic the background behind, and then I'll have like a layer of fog or the color from behind bleeding on top of the character. That way it will blend in even more better than just having it be plain like that. Okay, so I pre-composed all the layers, and then time to make it disappear in the background. So I had to use a levels effect and keyframed the brightness values to make it sort of get dark as it goes behind, so that it looks like it's coming from the darkness. And then I played with the opacity to make it fade out, and since the background is really dark, it will look like it's coming from the darkness to the light. So you can see it's just floating, it's just coming from the darkness to the light, as you can see that. But it's not matching quite well. There are a lot of details that are remaining. I had to put in a match grain, since you can see if you look at the background, there's a lot of grain in there, and it's always just important step to add the match grain effect to match the elements together. And even if right now it looks really grainy, but as you are playing it, it won't look as grainy. It will just look matched together, and you're going to wonder why it's looking matched and then not know why. Of course, it's standing in front of this car, but it's not having any reflections and shadows, so I duplicated the same layers twice, code one shadow and code the other one reflection. Then I had to place a tint and a levels on the shadow layer and played with the blending mode. I applied a Gaussian blur and blared it, and then just animated it to pop in as it comes near the car. and then I played with opacity and the rotation and the position just so that it can look matched. I did the same for the reflection layer, except I placed a Gaussian blur, but the blending mode was a little bit different. I had to play with different blending modes to get it look right, the way I wanted it to look. And you know, it looked like a reflection, and this is what actually made it sell very much. When people watched the video, they were like, it's real, because we can see the reflection on top of the car and the shadows. So it actually is real, because if it wasn't real, we wouldn't see this. So next thing is, if you look at the background, it has got some sort of blurry movement. Since it was taken from a still frame, it sort of has this motion blur still. So I had to place a directional blur on top of the flying character, so that it can look like it's matching the background. And of course I had to do overall motion blur in the end, but you know, you get it, just matching the stuff together. Next thing is, for the glowy eyes, I took the flying footage in Mocha, and I just had to track the hair part where I wanted the eyes to appear from, and I brought it back and I created a solid, made it a little bit blue. I cut out 2 masks from the solid to mimic the eyes, and I had to parent those solids to the track no, which I tracked in Mocha, and then just have them pop in, and I applied a glow to make them really glow very much. And then for the shadow on the curtain, I had a separate track on the curtain so that I can attach the flying render to it. So I duplicated the same one, the same character, and then I froze frame it and then parented it to the track of the curtain. Then I got a vector blur and a tint and placed it on top, and make sure that I blurred it in a way that it looks like it's the shadow behind. And I changed the opacity to a lower value so that it can look like it's a shadow from the curtain. And of course I did some trial and errors and some work spent into it to make it look as realistic as possible. Then for the clock animation, it's just a clock that I found in the content browser, in the Cinema 4D content browser, and I animated the you know, the clocks to spin and to move, and I placed the time counter to 3 AM so that it can, you know, be there. And then I had to match the colors and the lighting, and I had to render that still frame for the clock, and I put it back into After Effects, and I tracked the wall separately. It was kind of a hard track since there was a lot of chaotic movements, but in the end I got it right. And of course I applied a match grain on the watch as well so that it can fit well in the scene. And what I did was I had to record some sound effects using my phone. So if you hear these sound effects, the ones that are supposed to be the sound effects for the witch outside, they are actually sound effects that I was just recording with my phone, and I apply these silly effects and make them, you know, sound scary as possible. I mean, they're not supposed to be scary, but the tiniest things are the ones that play with people's minds and make them feel that, you know, something is real and stuff. So there we have it, guys. That's how I did the viral flying swimming witch video, which you have all been asking about. I'm still actually getting comments on my TikTok. The video has gotten over, it's now 6.6 million views. And next time, don't believe anything you see, because, you know, the technology has moved really far, and we've really evolved. There's AI now, there's a lot of stuff that is looking real within seconds. So you shouldn't believe things easily. I'm not saying that you should stop believing. You should be believing, but don't be too gullible. Yeah. Okay, so thank you for watching, guys. Thank you for staying to the end of the video. I hope you liked it, hope you enjoyed it. Leave a thumbs up, and if you want, subscribe. If you want, don't. It's up to you. But thank you, and I'll see you next time.